Hi guys, this is Hunter with Sonic Electronics, and today we'll be showing you guys how to install a subwoofer amplifier inside of this 2017 Volkswagen Tiguan. And some of the tools that you'll need are some zip ties, grommet poker, some pick tools, some pry tools, non-marring. This is very important for plastic. Your obvious lights, some cutters, some bits for your drill, your wrenches, some Allen wrenches, and today for this install we'll be using ferrules. And to go through the firewall, we may need a piece of wire like this or some fish tape to guide the wire, as the battery is pretty close to the firewall. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then over here for materials, you'll need a line output converter. In this instance, we have a plug and play through Access, but you could also use a universal line output converter like so. We'll touch more on this later. And then you'll need your power wire, fuse holder, RCAs, remote wires, speaker wire, and obviously your subwoofer and box. So let's go ahead and get started. So now we're going to discuss the main differences between your plug and play options and a universal line output converter. So first thing you're going to want to do to be sure you get the proper fitment is go to sonicelectronics.com and put your vehicle in, and it'll show you all the options that we do carry. So for instance, for this Tiguan, the only option we have through Access is a basic 2-channel line output converter. This comes with your harness, bass knob, and bass knob wiring. And what you can do in some instances is have different options like a DSP, maybe a 4-channel line output converter, stuff like that. So it's good to see all of your options. If you don't have any options for your vehicle, then we can come on over to our universal, which these universals nowadays are really nice. What you can do, and the options on here are your built-in load resistors. You have audio sense, DC sense, and what that is your factory radio, once it switches on, it'll offset the DC voltage on your speaker wires, and that'll allow this to turn on. Or in audio sense, it will sense the music coming through this device and it'll output a remote out to your amplifier. So you don't have to go searching in your vehicle for an ignition or an accessory, stuff like that. Then you also have ground isolation. In case you have any noise in your system, you can play around with this and see what the best setting is for it. Both of these devices do have and come with a bass knob. For the most part, they all come with a remote wire out for your plug and play options. And also, you have much more capability of tuning with the universal most of the time, because all you have tuning wise with these line output converters usually is just one knob, and that's just your voltage output on your line here. And then with this, you actually can compensate for your bass roll off. And then you also have your clip light, so you know when your signal is clipping on the output on your low level side. So one of the first steps you guys want to take into consideration is pre-planning. Now this step is very important because this is going to allow you to get a really rough idea of where you're going to run your power wire and how you're going to run it and the length you will need. So in this vehicle, the first thing we're going to do is figure out where we're going to route our power wire into the vehicle. First thing we're going to want to do is take the battery cover off, set that aside. We also want to know what's our positive and what's our negative. So our positive is here, our negative is here. Now, while I'm here, I'm also going to disconnect the negative battery terminal. And then we'll take a look inside of the vehicle at our options of where we can bring our power wire in from. Put that off to the side. All right, so the first thing we want to do is find out where we want our amplifier, and what could also dictate where you put your amplifier would be your firewall access. Yes, you can drill through anywhere you want in your firewall as long as you don't hit anything important. So you always want to double check before you drill through the firewall. But so in this case, we want the amplifier underneath the driver's seat, and right by our brake pedal we have a factory location where the clutch pedal would go, which is here. We can just pull this off, and then we will be drilling a hole through this little plastic piece right here. In this instance, since the battery is so close to that location, we're going to drill our hole and feed a wire through there, and then we're going to tape our power wire to that wire and then pull it through the firewall. Vehicle like this, first thing you're going to want to do is get your wire like this. Just make your life a lot easier. And most amplifier installation kits, your wiring kit, will come with a little grommet. So when you drill through the firewall, your wire is not sitting on that bare metal and cutting into the wire. So we're gonna go ahead and install these, even though it's plastic, you don't have to, but it is nice just for the aesthetics and looks of it. So if somebody ever does have to get back in here, it looks professional, and that's the way we're gonna keep it. So let's go ahead and drill our hole. What we're actually gonna do is pop this out. So this is our little piece. We're gonna drill through here. So now we have our grommet installed on our grommet. That sounds goofy, but true. And we also have our wire ran up to the battery, routed the way I want the wire to be routed. So here's the other side of our wire underneath the hood here. So as you can see, I left a little bit hanging here. So in case we get stuck on something, this can slide down a little while we try to guide it through. So that's what we're gonna do. So let's take a look at it inside the vehicle and see what's happening while we do this. All right, we're gonna cut the electrical tape. Just like so. Set our wire off to the side. Feed our wire through, like so. All right, you're gonna wanna go back and forth sometimes to make sure that the braided, if your kit comes with the braided wire in the front, make sure that doesn't bunch up on you in those tight spaces between the battery and the firewall. Just like so. Pull this up. And then from here, what you're gonna wanna do is go back underneath the hood, mount your fuse block. What I like to do is mount the fuse block, connect the power, but I like to take the fuse out until the very end. I'll put the fuse in right before we start the vehicle and tune. So let's go up underneath the hood and finish that part. So at this current moment, we're gonna route our wire so that our factory cover can go back over this if possible. Some installations do require the cover to come off or permanently alter, as in drilling holes or notching this out with some cutters. This piece is broken, so we do have the option to actually go ahead and cut that some more, but we're gonna do our best to keep it OEM as possible. So this is how we ended up putting the power wire onto the battery. These types of terminals are never fun because these nuts, they don't like to come off, because what they do is they strip these last few threads here, so it'll get stuck there. If you try hard enough, anything's possible. So we got that nut off and we put the power wire there. So at this current moment, we're gonna figure out our fuse holder. We think we want to put our fuse holder here, but before we do so, we want to be sure we're gonna clear the hood and make sure there's no contact. I don't think we will run into this issue due to this actually going up, the hood going up right after the seal. So I believe our hood's gonna sit right here, but you always wanna double check before you just go ahead and mount it. Just get this out of the way, get this out of the way. Oh yeah, we got room for days. Plenty of room. And now also, before you just go ahead and drill this into the fuse box like I'm about to do, you want to double check to make sure you have enough clearances before your fuses. As you can see, where I want to mount this and our screw holes will never come in contact with the fuse. But we're also going to use 1/4" screws for this, so it's not going to go too deep in, and we also have about 1 inch of clearance on top of this. So as you can see, this lip here, this seal mates with this lip. So from that lip to this seal, we have about 1 inch of area to work with before we were to hit a fuse. Now some of these fuses are a little bigger. So this one's about 1/4 inch. So I have a feeling I could use 3/4" screws, but we definitely don't need that. We're gonna use 1/4" screws and mount it right here to this fuse block. Let's go ahead and get that done. We'll cut up our wire and attach our wire to this fuse block. What I'm doing here is marking this braid. I'm gonna want about that much, so double that. And put my other piece of tape here. What this is gonna do is not allow the braid to fray and loosen up while we cut this to add to our fuse block. Like so. Let me get some cutters and I'll show you what I mean. So right in the middle of these pieces of tape, we're gonna cut it. Like so. Then this stuff is going to want to fray like this. You can either take a razor to it, cut these off. Now if you guys are going to be doing a lot of installs, I would definitely suggest investing in some flush cuts. Now they're different from side cuts. Reason being is side cuts have a divot that goes in. These are flat, so no matter what you're cutting, it'll be flush with the surface that you're cutting against. So let's strip this wire. Boop. Take off your loose strands, like so. Make sure this piece doesn't touch ground. All right, we're gonna open up our fuse holder, take our fuse out. Tighten these back up so we don't lose them. Put that there. So we got our bolts loosened up here. Put this in at an angle, then push her on in. Secure it with the Allen key here. Get it nice and tight. You can also use ferrules for the fuse holders, which I do like to do, but we're not going to do in this case due to the braided line. My ferrules don't like to go over this. But we're not running that much power. It's to be honest, we're going to be running 350 watts off of a 1,000 watt mono block, but it's going to be running at 4 ohms. So this size wire is way overkill for what we're going to be doing. But you never know if the customer wants to upgrade in the future, so give them the better wire. So we're going to tighten this up. Then we're going to grab ourselves a couple of screws, 1/4 inch screws. Go ahead and mount it to the fuse block. Pull a little extra in. Here we go. Pull back what I need. And just tie it like that. So now we're going to stick the grommet back on since we have the full length in the car. Pop right in there. Boop. Just like that. Then we're going to stick our power wire underneath the vehicle for later. Now we're going to move on to the radio. Okay, first step is going to be to remove the radio trim bezel, which is this piece. It houses our AC vents, our heater vents, our hazard lights, and our airbag light. Now, at the same time, when your trim bezel has an airbag light, never turn on the vehicle when this light is unplugged if you ever have to unplug this light. Otherwise, you may have to take your vehicle to the dealership to have that light turned off. That is something to be aware of. For the interior plastic pieces, you always want to use a non-marring plastic pry tool. Just in case you slip, it's less likely to cause any damage. Set it was hot. There we go, pop these out. Pop the airbag light out. So normally you don't usually want to use a pick, but as long as you know what you're doing, you should be fine. Just like that. Stick our pry tool in there. And without any damage, just like that. Now how I did that was I put my pick on top of my non-marring tool and then got underneath it, pried it with this, and then kept this under here and pried. Now we're gonna remove 2 T20s on the top corners here. And then now this should pop off. We'll set this aside, right up here. Now we're gonna take these 4 T20s out from beside the radio. Alrighty, pull out our radio. Unplug it. There we go. Plug that. We're gonna unplug the rest of it, just so our radio's not banging around, scratching up the dash. Now that our radio is out of the way, we can grab our line output converter and go ahead and just plug it in, hook up the few wires that we need, go from there. All right, so we went ahead and prepped our harness before we installed it. And what I had included in this harness was the bass knob plug in here, the remote wire, and our signal to our amplifier. So now all we have to do in the vehicle is drop this in a dash, run it underneath the dashboard, and then just plug this in, plug the radio back in, and reinstall the radio. But we're not gonna just go ahead and reinstall the radio, because what we're gonna wanna do is adjust our output voltage on our signal once the amplifier is powered up and that's installed. So we're just gonna plug it in, let it sit there, and just run our wires with our power wire. Now, some of you are gonna say, well, what about noise? You're gonna run your RCA signal wire with the power wire? Yes, it's a monoblock amplifier. If you hear any whine out of your subwoofer, there's already a different issue. So let's go ahead and get this installed. There we go. Pull your wires in. I'm gonna leave about that much slack and plug this in. So we went ahead and found where we're gonna place our ground for this amplifier. We ended up finding a factory stud, not a stud, but a bolt location with no bolts in it. We grounded it down as much as we could, anywhere basically where our ring terminal is going to be touching will be on bare metal. So let's go ahead and put this in. And on our bolt here, we have a washer and a lock washer. These are important. Just like that. And that's how you ground an amp. Then we're gonna run our wire to where we want it. Should be through here, but we'll cut this foam backing out before we run it through here. So look at our power and our signal remote and our base knob wire finished up first. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So we're gonna want zip ties to straighten this out. So our base knob wire is actually gonna stay underneath the dash there. So this is the one that's not going to be coming with us. Toss that to the other side. So now we're going to be turning our amplifier wires, our RCA remote, and power wire into one harness to match the factory aesthetics. But at the same time, if this vehicle ever gets serviced, we want whoever to service it know, hey, these are audio wires. So we're gonna leave a gap in here so they can tell what all this is in between our tape lines here. So I'll probably keep doing this until I get to about here. And then we'll start fitting the power, ground, and remote into the amplifier. And we're gonna put it down here, run it with the factory harness. Tucking isn't always the best thing to do because, well, A, it looks sloppy, but If that suits your fancy, then you can go ahead and do that. But we're gonna do this as professional as possible. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end, because 9 times out of 10, I'll never have to service this vehicle. Just because I took the extra time, made sure everything was done correctly. Now we got everything up here. So we have a little bit of extra Tesa tape than we need. So we're gonna go ahead and unwrap some of those. Now we're gonna cut our hole if we need to. Does not look like we actually need to here. There it is. Pull this through, like so. Alright. So now, I know I have more than enough wire if I snip it here. So I'm going to go ahead and snip it. Get rid of my excess. I should say. Run my remote wire in the middle. That's where it is on the amplifier. And then right on the inside of this carpet here, what I'm going to do is zip tie just these 3 wires at first, just so nothing moves around on me on this side, makes anything tight or anything. Go. Just like so. Remove our excess. So now what I'm going to do is run my RCAs all the way underneath this carpet to the other side. We have some access to plug in my RCAs. Just like that. Once you got that done, what you want to do is plug them in. Like so. Pull however much you don't need. Then I like to pull at least another inch. So about where we did have it, and then we can tuck that once everything's installed. But just give yourself a little extra. Like that. And then, since we have so much room down here, I'm just gonna bundle this up. so. Zip tie it. This is a good example of those flush cuts. We can zoom in here. Normally when you cut zip ties with some side cuts or something, there's something there that's going to cut you. Nothing here is going to cut you. Put that back underneath our power ground, like so. All right. At this point, center your amplifier wherever you'd like it. And then cut your wires. What I like to do is line them up with the terminal. And at a 45, look at the top of this amplifier. Place my thumb on the back side of my flush cuts, right where my thumb's at. That one's cut. So I should have plenty to go in there. Same thing with the ground. Flat side towards my thumb. Cut. Depending on what you're doing and the type of amplifier you have, dictates how much wire you need to actually expose. So I'm using ferrules, so ferrules are a little long, and plus our set screws are at an angle, so I took off a little bit extra. So we're sure that we have enough wire. Now this is where it's important that we didn't have a fuse in our fuse block, so we're not going to short nothing, which is great. It's exactly what we don't want. All right, so we have our ferrules. All you got to do is just put it in at an angle like that, feed it in, twist with the twist of the wire, just like that. Wire in there. All right. All right, now that our amplifier is all wired up, what we're gonna do now is stick the subwoofer box in the back here, reconnect our seat, throw the negative terminal back on, and throw the fuse in the fuse block and make sure everything powers on and acts appropriately. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we went ahead, ran the speaker wire underneath the trim all the way to the back here, and put the subwoofer in the box, all that good stuff. That's about it. All we gotta do is just get it all cleaned up and tune it. Now we go inside the vehicle and just turn it on, make sure everything functions. We don't have any warning lights or airbag lights on inside the vehicle. So all we really have to do, since it pried out, is just plug it in. Just like that. We're gonna plug in our radio. It's a brand new harness. Now, while I'm here, I also want to explain the difference between a line output converter remote or a factory remote wire. Now, when you're using a factory system, whether or not your lock has a remote out built into it, what you're going to have to do is either find an ignition wire, which with a lot of push to starts, it is really difficult to find one since most of the wires in the vehicle are data wires. So you're not going to get a proper 12-volt signal in the vehicle. That's why the premium line output converters are a good way to go to get your remote signal without having to search for a wire in your vehicle. All right, guys, one last thing I wanted to mention before I put this radio back in. The main difference between this plug-and-play harness and the universal line output converters is I would have to splice into your factory wiring, or if you're adding a 4-channel and you want to use your factory wiring, you would actually cut your speaker wires and pull signal. So from this harness, from your head unit would go to your line output converter, and then from your amplifier to your speakers, you'll tag into the other end, which is going into this factory harness and down and out. But like I said before, we have a plug-and-play harness here, which simplified the entire process. And if you're a beginner and just learning about car audio, this is definitely the way to go. So we have a red light on, which means it's sending a 12-volt remote signal out. So let's go to our amplifier and just double check. Just gonna set that like that. And our lights are on. So that tells us everything else should be good. We're gonna go ahead and button everything up. So now we're in the process of tuning our line output converter and our amplifier. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do, is we're gonna set up the amplifier. The amplifier is low pass, subsonic. So the low pass will be set at about 80 hertz. Subsonic, I'm gonna put it around 30. And the bass frequency about 45 on this woofer. Bass boost is down, all the way down. And we want to also be sure that our gain on our amplifier is all the way down. So some of you guys might be asking yourselves, well, how do I know what's 80 hertz? There are machines and tools out there like the CC1 by SMD with DMOR technology and stuff, but those are quite pricey. To rough it, what you can do is kind of just go 50 to 250. You're like, what's in the middle of that? And then you can just eyeball it from there. So I'm going to turn it about a third of the way. And then you can fine tune that by ear through each and every song that you play while tuning it. Then I had mentioned I put the subsonic at 30. So 10's all the way at the bottom, 50's here. At least this is 55. So we're right around 30, 25 hertz. I would say my frequency is right at about 45, 50 hertz. And now what we do is we play music, or what you can do is play a test tone at 40 hertz, turn this up until you hear distortion, turn it back down. But we're actually just going to tune it with some music today. Done tuning the line output converter. So the process of that, what I was just doing was I was listening for the subwoofer with the gain all the way down on the amplifier, and I could slightly hear distortion come out of the subwoofer. So that was telling us that our signal was getting dirty. So I was turning that down right to the sweet spot, and then I kind of played around in that sweet spot, and I like it right where it's at. So from here, we can throw the radio back in and then go to our amplifier once the radio's in, and then tune our amplifier the rest of the way. So let's go ahead and get that done. We got the amplifier all mounted, wired up, tuned. We got the bass knob all wired up, mounted. The amplifier is not screwed into metal, it is just screwed into the carpet just so it doesn't move around. Okay guys, so that's how we install a mono block subwoofer amplifier with a factory radio in this Volkswagen Tiguan. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, and you guys have a wonderful day.